Hey everyone, and welcome to Geeksvana Live. I hope you're all very well and had a fantastic holiday break and also weekend, as we are now back into another January week. We are 2% of the way through 2023. That's a little bit scary, isn't it? But thank you very much for everybody for joining us this evening. I really do appreciate it. It's great to see so many of the usual names stacking up there in the chat. Really appreciate it. Now, we're going to be coming on to the live chat. I normally like to say hello to everybody that's coming in, etc., and that type of thing, but we're going to be coming on to that in just a little bit. I'm going to do it again this time where I put the story at the start, which is really for the sake of those that are just wanting to get to the story and people watching the replay as well, as it's not as much fun when you're not here for the live chat. But we'll run through the information of the story first, but do tag at Geeksvana in the live chat, and we'll come back to your comments and questions on this because I'm really interested in the community reaction on this one as well. So getting straight into it, earlier today, two press releases have hit my desk. They're relating to an ongoing court action, which today resulted in a guilty plea being submitted and therefore the conviction of a 49-year-old man for endangering an aircraft whilst flying his drone. He also pled guilty to flying beyond visual line of sight. Let's take a look at the actual information itself first, which is the two press releases, and then we can take apart the story a little bit together and have a look at it. So let me bring that up, make sure that's working. So first up, we have a press release which has come in around 3:30 this afternoon from, actually I think the release was actually around 4 o'clock, from Derbyshire Constabulary, and it reads, as you can see here at the top, drone pilot pleads guilty to endangering a historic aircraft. A drone pilot who nearly caused a serious accident at a memorial flight in Buxton has pleaded guilty to endangering an aircraft. The incident happened at the Buxton Carnival in July 2022 during a flypast by the RAF's Battle of Britain memorial flight Hurricane. At the time, the flight had been protected by a short-term airspace restriction which banned all other flying in the area, including drones. Images captured on the day showed the drone flying dangerously close to the wing of the Hurricane, which was being watched by an estimated 20,000 people. Officers worked to identify the drone operator, a 49-year-old man from Buxton, and his drone was seized as part of their investigation. Analysis showed it was flying over Buxton at the time of the flypast. Mark Bagley of Chatsworth Road, Fairfield, was arrested and subsequently charged with endangering an aircraft and operating an aircraft out of visual line of sight. He pleaded guilty to both charges before magistrates at Chesterfield Justice Centre today, which is the day of this live stream, Monday the 9th of January, and is set to appear again in February for sentencing. Following the case, today the Civil Aviation Authority and police are reminding drone operators of the need to fly safely and legally. PC Matt Moore here is quoted, who is the flight safety manager for Derbyshire Constabulary drone team. The way the pilot flew his drone was unsafe, illegal and totally unacceptable. Anyone using a drone must follow the rules to make sure they fly safely. As a police drone unit, we know the benefits drones can bring to society, but people using a drone in this way not only threaten the safety of aircraft and the public, they also damage the future use of drones. This is for the safety of not only yourself but others around. And then it obviously finishes this press release, as you might expect, with the notice saying drones must be flown safely and legally within the limits of the operating category as that they are flying in, which I think is actually quite a good one-line way of putting it, actually. This includes operator registration, pilot competency and maintaining separation distances from members of the public, built-up areas and manned aviation. All drone operators are responsible for ensuring the drone is being flown safely and within the law at all times. So that was the police one from Derbyshire Constabulary, and of course, as you might expect, there was also a press release from the CAA, which we'll take a very quick look at as well, from the purposes of the fact that we've seen both of them. And then, as I say, we'll get into this and break this down a little bit more as we go through it. Just watching XJet there admitting it was him in the chat. So here we go. So the CAA one here. So serious drone prosecution highlights need for drone users to understand and follow safety rules. Published 9th of January, and this is on the latest news section of the CAA website, which is where their press releases of this type would be published. So the incident is one of the most serious seen in the UK with a drone. Drone pilot pleaded guilty to endangering the safety of an aircraft. Aircraft involved was an extremely rare and historic hurricane from the RAF's Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. The Civil Aviation is reminding drone users of the need to fly safely and follow the rules or face serious consequences. Following a drone pilot pleading guilty to endangering the safety of a historic World War Hurricane aircraft when flying his drone, the UK Civil Aviation Authority has called on drone users to follow the safety rules. The incident happened at Saturday 9th of July 2022 during a flight past of the RAF's Battle of Britain Hurricane over Buxton Carnival in Derbyshire. The flight was protected by a short-term airspace restriction, as the police release was also stating. And it follows up, as you might expect, with more talk in terms of the actual the drone rules, etc. Virtually all drone users have to register with the CAA and take an online flyer test. This helps them to understand the safety requirements and includes information about checking the airspace. Jonathan Nicholson, who's the Assistant Director at the Civil Aviation Authority, is quoted as saying, "Flying a drone and endangering an aircraft in this way is totally unacceptable. Drone users have an obligation to understand and follow the rules. While flying a drone can be great fun, it also comes with significant responsibilities. People need to check airspace before they fly their drone and only fly where it's safe and legal to do so. Airspace restrictions like the one in place for this case apply to even the smallest of drones. So it is really important that people check before they fly. When you use a drone, you're sharing airspace with many other types of aviation, so it's vital that drone users consider the safety of everyone when flying." And then there's the quote follow-up, which is from PC Mapmore, which is the one from their own release as well. And as it states, even when flying below 400 feet, 120 metre maximum height for drones, it's still possible to be sharing the airspace with other aircraft, such as emergency helicopters and military aircraft. The RAF spokesman said, and so it's an interesting one that they've included here, the RAF conducts essential low-flying training across the UK. Drones operating in the vicinity of our aircraft can offer a significant threat to their safety and can be extremely challenging for our aircrew to spot and take avoiding action. Therefore, if a drone operator becomes aware of any military aircraft flying in their vicinity, we would request that they cease flying and until the aircraft has passed, which I think is one of the things that most of us experienced flyers are aware of. Other key safety rules from the UK Drone and Model Aircraft Code include, obviously, never flying above 120 metres of the surface, keeping your drone or model aircraft in direct sight, clearly enough that you can tell which way it's facing, never flying in an airport's restricted zone unless you have permission. And as it's stating there, with nearly 300,000 people registered as drone flyers, this obviously continues to grow for both recreational and commercial purposes. And the rules are in place to make sure that drones can be safely integrated. Now, we also get notes for editors here, which are a couple of points which I think are interesting to run through. The drone pilot was arrested and subsequently charged with endangering an aircraft and operating a drone out of line of sight. He pleaded guilty to both charges at Chesterfield Justice Centre today, and he'll be sentenced in February. And then it just again confirms regarding the registration requirements, etc., for drone use, which you can find at register-drones.caa.co.uk. So here we have a drone pilot who has pleaded guilty to 2 offences. I take no pleasure in the fact that this gentleman's life is now obviously going to change forever somewhat. And I'm obviously not here to sit in judgment of him personally. That will happen by magistrates during the sentencing hearing in February. There are a lot of factors we don't know about, such as the experience and knowledge, although I think it's fairly safe to say that there is no mitigating factor. There is no situation or circumstances which gives an excuse for what happened here. I think there really should have been a lot of common sense. Now, as far as I can see, and we have looked at the information that we've been given in terms of the press releases and made a few calls and a little bit of digging. But as far as I can see, this is the flight that many of us would have seen across social media a few months ago, with pictures and videos showing the drone literally just off it felt like it was just off the wingtip of the aircraft. From the press releases and the other information that I've gained, it does suggest that this was the path of investigation. So the content was reported after being posted online and then Derbyshire investigated from there, rather than it being a sort of active SUAS operation at the carnival. Seizing the equipment, I would assume, gave them the flight logs, etc. But obviously that doesn't not necessarily from the drone itself. Once they've got the serial numbers and other information, there's other ways to prove where the drone was flying. So it'll be interesting to see how much detail in terms of the investigation comes out. Although, of course, they're going to protect some of that information for obvious reasons as well. The pilots pled guilty to endangering the aircraft, so along the lines of the Article 241 of the Air Navigation Order. As I've stated before on the channel many times, we can be flying within the rules of the drone code as such, but still fall foul of something like Article 241, which is pretty much all encompassing in terms of safety of our drone flight, and specifically and especially with our drone mixing with other aircraft. Now, they also pled guilty to flying their drone out of visual line of sight, so again, the details of that are going to be interesting to see, which I assume we'll get more of that in the actual sentencing. There are, for me, a few important points here which I would like to highlight, and as I say, I will come back to the chat, so please, I can see the chat flying away there, so please, I will be putting people's comments on screen. Firstly, I don't think this should be or will be used to seek tougher drone rules against the hobby. So let's sort of deal with that one first, and that's my personal opinion. This conviction, being the first of its kind, suggests that the process of enforcing the existing laws around drones are perhaps being carried out more effectively, or perhaps this was more of an open and shut case. I have spoken to solicitors in the past when I've been talking about things like Air Navigation Order, who have always talked about that it would be a fairly tough thing to prosecute under the generic sort of Article 241 side of things. But if we're talking about a drone in very, very close proximity with a hurricane at a public event with tens of thousands of people, that type of thing, perhaps this was a really, obvious one there. And of course, the gentleman has pleaded guilty rather than it being a guilty finding after a jury trial or anything. There's nothing in the story which suggests to me that more regulation is required. Without knowing the specific details of whether or not the drone pilot was deliberately flouting the rules or had no clue, it's unclear how any other kind of regulation or law would have prevented it actually happening. I think we all say this within the community, or many of us say it within the community, that just because someone's registered or just because there is drone registration, just because there is the drone legislation and the drone code and everything else like that, it doesn't stop someone that wants to act like an idiot, if that's what happened in this case. But so really, there are no rules and regulations that can stop this kind of thing necessarily from happening. Obviously, education and that type of thing can help an awful lot, but certainly in terms of enforcement, these laws, etc., these rules help to prosecute the idiots after the case, frankly. So instead, to me, the focus coming from this story should be one of education. It's going to get a lot of coverage, and rather than sort of angry fists shaking at us darn drone users, this will hopefully be used to reach those people who either fly without a care and ignore the rules, just don't look them up, that they know about, or those occasional users who simply do not have any knowledge of temporary flight restrictions. I think, aside from the very, very serious nature of this incident and the absolute correct situation where this gentleman is being convicted of those of those two charges, I think that there is a wider thing here. There is a wider interest in terms of, was this an experienced hobbyist just flouting the rules, or is this an occasional user who didn't know? And I think either way, the coverage of this story is probably going to give us a much wider, open sort of education of wider people there, basically. Now, this is a topic which we featured heavily on Geeksvana, including videos focused specifically on how to find out about restrictions and using the Drone Assist app to help you do that. We've even put out a video to dispel the online folklore that the DJI drone geofence, if that lets you take off, then you're good to go and you can just start flying. It simply isn't the case, and you must confirm the airspace is clear yourself before each flight. I really cannot stress that enough. Even if you're flying somewhere that you fly regularly at, you need to. I still check at my BMFA field, which I've been flying at for years, just to make sure there aren't any temporary restrictions that have been put in place. My personal advice on that side of things, if we are talking about this being approached from the education point of view, is to download the excellent Drone Assist app from Altitude Angel. It's available on both Android and iOS. It shows you a lot of information from things like ground hazards and FRZs through to temporary restrictions. There is also, if I just click across here and pop that up there, so you can see it as it's here. I've brought up the Cornwall NOTAMs, etc. for this evening's space flight, which is very exciting. It shows you a lot of information from ground hazards and FRZs through to temporary restrictions. It also it even lets you log your flight for other users to see. It's only other users of Drone Assist that will see that. There is an online version, which is the dronesafetymap.com, so you can access it with any online browser capable device. I'd also recommend that you register with the CAA Skywise service, which is this one. Now, this is a website-based system, and there'll be links in the description to all of this after the show, and you can sign up for all sorts of updates, including drone and restriction-specific notifications. Now, those are probably what I would say are the simplest ways for your average hobbyist, certainly, but there's also sites like notam.info if you want to deeper dive or to understand more information, etc. I do have a what is a NOTAM video, which is edited and ready to go with the recent CAA stuff that's kind of been pushed on the back burner. So I do have an explainer of temporary restrictions, NOTAMs, how to read them, and all that kind of thing coming up soon on the channel as well. So there is obviously in this instance a genuine safety concern. Any drone coming into close proximity or worse still contact with a small aircraft like a Hurricane, which is operating in an area with a large crowd, has so many red flags. This is one of the most blatant safety issues I've seen in my time as Geeksvana, and it's good to see the appropriate enforcement action taken, although I always put that personal caveat on there that there is obviously an individual involved here. Proportional action like this actually protects the hobby and the use of drones, in my opinion. If we're effectively and fairly policed and enforced, then the image of the outlawed drone pilot in the mind of the public diminishes. So really what I'm trying to say there is that as we have effective enforcement of the drone rules and the right people are proportionately punished, then that is going to very much minimize the thought process in the public that all drone pilots are idiots, that we're all, it will just become like somebody being prosecuted for dangerous driving and that type of thing. It will become, I think, much more of a norm. So that's the bare bones of the story. Let's head over into the chat, which I haven't actually been able to have much of a look at yet, and see what you guys are thinking about this one. So I will go up towards Zitop. Someone asking if it was Philly Drone Life. No, it was not. This was a UK one. Ian Simpson, good to see you. Hope you're well. One thing worth remembering is that the peanut power control signal is only certified for VLOS, as proved by countless videos. It is so less easy to control if you go non line of sight. Yes, absolutely. These drones are designed, etc., to be flown within regulations. And those were some of the pre-show comments. Construct games. An object in motion stays in motion until enacted by an equal and opposite force. PD Tech, hi, good to see you. I hope you're well. Did I mention I have super hyper eyesight? I can count the hairs on a gnat's back at 1,000 paces. That, sir, is extremely impressive. And Legwork, one of our channel members, hi, good to see you, Bill. Might be an unpopular opinion, but if the facts support the case, he deserves everything coming his way. And yeah, and that's it, isn't it? And obviously we have to trust in the system, etc., that they will, that the pre-sentencing system will obviously find, the appropriate action and the appropriate response to put forward to magistrates. If it's still in the magistrates court, I'm not sure if it was sent to higher court or not after that. Ian Simpson again, to quote Hitchhiker's Guide, flying is simply the art of falling at the ground and missing. Yes, I like that one, Ian. And see if there are any others that tag at Geeksvana specifically for this. Simon Stickland, hi Simon, good to see you. The February sentencing will set a precedent. I wonder which way they'll go with it. Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it, Simon? Because it is whether or not we will see. There is the old sort of adage, isn't there, of the book being thrown at someone, and there is that system to ensure that the the crime fits the punishment and the situation and the mitigation and everything else like that. But yeah, it is going to be interesting to see which ways it goes. I think that hopefully the publicity from the guilty plea will be enough to do that. But we'll have to wait and see. And as XJet says, and as I was trying to explain during that, in terms of, will this mean that we have more drone rules coming in? You can't regulate stupid. You can enforce stupid after the event, and you can take action, etc. But yeah, I have to have some kind of agreement with that. Matt Axon, the man was an idiot, deserve what he gets. I can't wait to see the knee-jerk rule changes this will bring in. I understand the concern there, Matt. I understand the fear almost behind that, but actually I don't necessarily think that that's going to be the case with this one. I think that if anything, it shows that actually, if you do have the effective and you do take the right steps to control an area with a temporary restriction order, etc., that type of thing, then actually, and you do have the drone code out there publicly and that type of thing, and the requirement for drone registration and all the other hoops that us hobby drone flyers have to jump through. I think then it comes down to effective enforcement, which is clearly what's happened here. And Ellis, weird how it comes out now, since we were all bashing the rules and no significant things endangering people, etc. the other week. Yeah, the legal system, the court system takes its time. This actually came up. This actually first came up as a story back in the summer, because the way that it came up is the gentleman posted the footage online, and that's where the complaints rose, and then obviously the police investigations happened and that type of thing. So. Tim Long, Geeksvana, this will make it a wee bit more difficult to claim we're as safe and responsible. Hopefully there will not be any recurrence. Yeah, it's an interesting one, Tim, because it certainly, there is always the where's the bodies, where's the danger, where's XYZ argument. And I understand that. I have Bruce on this channel regularly to shout that at me. And I appreciate his viewpoints. And as many will know, I often jokingly, but there's more seriousness behind the joke, I do jokingly refer to the fact that actually I do agree with Bruce a lot more than I disagree. But it is certainly, I think the issue here is the wider drone use of drones by people who are not hobbyists, who don't see themselves as hobbyists. I have no idea regarding this gentleman and his intentions or his background or his I've said that enough times now, haven't I, to say that I'm not picking on this particular gentleman. But my concern in recent months and over the last couple of years has always been the fact that we have things like the Mini 2, the Mini 3, these very light drones, which are very safe. So the risk is so much smaller when you're flying one of these. So let's not forget that. But actually the fact that you have a much wider audience flying drones now, whether or not that in itself becomes an issue in terms of reaching them as well. I do worry about how we effectively reach people who are flying drones, because who don't see themselves as hobbyists and don't watch channels like mine and the other great channels out there like Ian in London, etc., to get tips on the rules and that type of thing. That does concern me, because I don't believe that most people would blatantly say, hey, screw the rules, I'm just going to fly my drone here and try and get as close to that hurricane as they can and then post it online. So yeah, unless we are talking about the most idiot of idiots here. But yeah, so thank you for the point. Nick Sanders, hi Nick, good to see you. I was actually flying with Nick and a few of our Discord members over the last couple of nights on Flight Simulator, which was an experience. There is a YouTube video out there somewhere of us doing it as well, which was always fun. Do you think the lack of flyer ID for sub 250 contributed to this? I don't know, and this is another one actually that I have sympathy for on both sides of that fence. Basically, I think with a sub, we don't know what drone was used. It's important to state. We assume it's going to be a Mini because that's what so many of us fly and would probably choose to fly anywhere near any people, etc. Because you can fly, obviously, not crowds of 20,000 people, but you can fly over individual people, uninvolved people. But the whole flyer ID thing, I'm not sure. There is the argument that if you have to register that drone and you then have to follow the drone code, why wouldn't you then also be made to pass the flyer ID? But I don't like the constant progression of drone rules becoming more and more restrictive to everybody. I think somebody flying a sub 250 gram camera drone can get the basics of the rules from the drone code, etc., and fly pretty safely without having to know too much in depth and that type of thing. So I'm kind of on both sides of the fence with that one. Depending on what day you catch me, I'm fairly passionate on each side of the fence, actually, because it's very difficult. I don't want to see drone rules for the sake of drone rules, but also I think that the lack of flyer ID. I mean, I've seen that contribute directly on other things. We had the gentleman on the beach down in Dorset or Devon, who was clearly didn't have a clue, and he was saying, no, it's just sub 250, and I can fly my drone in this restricted area. It's just a toy, which was obviously a misunderstanding of the rules. But perhaps if that drone was registered, had also taken the flyer ID, he would have more of a clue regarding those. So it's a really good point to raise, Nick, and it's an interesting one. Cyberears, good to see you. More proud press for drones and drone users. Not good. This will lead to more drone restrictions. I might be eating my words in a few months, but I don't think so. I don't think that this. I think this might actually show the system works in terms of if there is what is a very serious incident. You know, we're not talking about somebody who flew slightly out of line of sight. Not that I'm saying that's okay to do, but we're not talking about someone who stood in a field and went behind a tree for a second as they were doing an orbit or something, or, you know, something that perhaps, without making any admissions live on air, that many of us might have done in the past, not knowing the rules, or have done thinking, okay, I'm going to be out of line of sight, and actually didn't realise it was going to go out of line of sight, etc. Caveating a lot there. But this is one of the more serious scenarios where perhaps even some of the more hardened anti-regulation people within the community might agree that this is the kind of situation where actually enforcement does need to take place and action does need to happen. So yeah, I don't think it will lead to more drone restrictions, although I know that feeling, especially with the recent CAA AMC releases and that type of thing, and how the community is feeling here in the UK, which is pretty battered and bruised, frankly. Horizon Airscapes, so one idiot in 300,000. Yeah, I wish it was just one idiot, but yes, absolutely. I mean, it's important to stress the sheer numbers behind this and the fact that we're not seeing this every single day in the press. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Yeah, exactly. As Bruce Exjet says, we don't condemn all knife owners just because some yobbo does something antisocial with one, do we? And I think that that's one of the subtleties to what I hope is a changing approach to the press with drones here in the UK, where they are looking at highlighting and educating rather than demonizing an entire hobby, which of course is where all of the Gatwick nonsense and all of the rhetoric and everything that came for so many years away from that incident really look to paint all drone users in a very bad light. And hopefully we can start seeing that this is a specific issue that's happened here with somebody who either didn't know the rules or who was an idiot, basically. And Tim Long at Geeksvana, the RAF spokesman, eminently reasonable. Yeah, I think so too. I have heard RAF comments to press which have been a lot harsher. The one where the drone pilot actually reported himself for an airprox with a Texan trainer aircraft last year now, of course, we're 2023, late last year. In there, the RAF were a little bit harder with their public comments than I would like to have seen, talking about sort of, you know, needing potentially more restrictions and that type of thing, etc. To, you know, the issue of drone use, hobby drone use, was an issue for them that needed resolving, which I understand it is an issue that needs resolving, but I think that yes, this spokesman handled things a lot better, in my opinion. Legwork, Section 3, Aviation Safety Act 1982. Other acts likely to endanger an aircraft has a possibility of a life imprisonment, but I highly doubt that will happen. Yeah, I think this was Section 241, which is fine and 5 years, up to 5 years. It's at the guilty plea was at magistrates. I don't know if it was passed up to a higher court at that point, which can sometimes happen at the point of plea. So depending on, you know, what stage everything is at, but I'm not going to really touch the sentencing thing until we hear in February, and that, yeah, we will have to wait and see. Construct Games, hi. Arguably, more experience should be seen as something worse than if it was a novice, as experienced flyers should know better. Yeah, 100%. And I fully expect all of that to be taken into account when the sentencing process is gone through. Bruce XJet, was it a 250-gram foam model of a Piper Cub? No, but let's regulate them as if it was. I understand, and thank you very much, Bruce, for being the voice of the RC hobby in tonight's stream. I really appreciate it. Russell Sanders, so the first ever drone conviction, how many, it's not the first ever drone conviction, it's the first ever it's the first of its kind for an Article 241, I think, because as I say, I think it's actually a fairly difficult thing to get a prosecution under. How many are charged, stroke convicted every day for driving under the influence, etc., yet we don't pillory every driver? Yeah. I know exactly what you mean, and I hope, as I was saying before, I hope that actually that will happen in terms of, the public will be highlighted these cases, but these are unusual cases, these are extreme cases where the dangers happened. And then if the press releases focus, as those press releases did, focus on the education side of things and public safety, then I think it's a good thing. We're saying actually drone use is fun, drone use can happen, drone use is legal, but it has to be done within these legal limits. And I think that kind of press release is much healthier than just looking to victimize the hobby and to demonize us, basically. Simon Stickland, if I was a DJI drone, they have encrypted onboard chips storing flight data. Many users are unaware. Thank you, Simon. Actually, perhaps this guy was also flying at Gatwick Airport around Christmas a few years ago. Hey, you never know, do you? The thing is, no one knows as well. So, yes. But of course, he didn't post it online a few years ago if it was him. And Horizon Escapes saying precisely what the other commenter was saying, that thousands of people break driving laws every day. There's always going to be people that will break rules no matter how tough. Exactly, yes. And Simon Stickland, totally enforcement is more effective than further regulation in such situations. Yeah, this will have, there will be, in my opinion, a significant sentence in terms of an impact on this gentleman's life and an impact in terms of the PR that it's going to put out. This is going to put out a very strong message to the hobby and to drone users and to people who aren't yet drone users who are going to. So there is a wider audience that we're going to reach. It's all very well and good, all of the comms that we have, all of the CAA interviews we have on Geeksvana, all of my other videos, etc. But you've got to come and look for them, and you've got to be someone that's interested in the hobby, or that YouTube decides that they're going to put one of my clickbait thumbnails in front of you to try and get you to come across. So, but certainly I think this will have this kind of story, and this kind of effective enforcement will have a wider impact in those terms. So I do agree. B Prentice 2010, thank you for becoming a member of the Vana Army. We do actually have a members meetup after the show, which is at 9 p.m. this evening. Just reminding all members that are watching, there will be, I'll put the link to the Zoom meeting again in the community tab for members to click on after the show again. Hillary Corney, I'll just put that one up there and allow that one to sink in as the chat jumps down. Thank you very much for all the people that have joined us this evening. I can see lots of hidden comments. Apologies they haven't been dealt with yet, but I'll get down and through those. The Whitby photographer, have you ever done a video flying in or near SSSI sites? I'd be interested to learn as much as possible. Yes, I have one coming up. Again, it's in the can, the CAA interviews, etc., which we've got 3 more of this week, and then a live show about it. Then after that, more normal-ish service will resume on the channel. But yes, I have one on that, and it's part of the council land type of clarification type video that I've got coming up as well, actually. So, yeah. Okay. Do my visuals? Good to see you, Jason. Based on what I'm hearing, I agree with the conviction. Hopefully, moving forward, this can prove an opportunity to educate the general population. Yep, well said. That is this entire live show in 2 sentences. Thank you, Jason. Trevor Fuss, Geeksvana, what is the minimum sentence for these offences? It's a fine, basically. Yes, it's a fine. Is the minimum sentence. I don't think it's a fine. Blah 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 and or prison. Certainly for the Article 241. I'm not sure about the VLOS one because I'm not sure actually what specific section of the ANO that will be, or the IR that will be under. Yeah, extra. I know what you mean. There is obviously that feeling that there will be an example made of this chap. I think that will hopefully depend a lot on the circumstances that I can't comment to in terms of that obviously we didn't get yet because it was a guilty plea rather than a trial, so we don't get the circumstances of what actually happened there as such yet. Mark R. White, good to see you, Mark. Hope you're well. We watch a lot of the same live shows, and I often see you in the live chat of the American drone live shows. Hope you're well, sir. Judging by the amount of people who put comments flaunting the regulations on Facebook groups, it won't be the last time that it happens, the first and last time that it happens. Yeah, I think so. I think we've got my next prediction for a chill at some point in the drone hobby, and in terms of that kind of thing, will be when the fixed penalty notices are cleared and start happening. Which, I mean, is that going to be this year? I don't know, but yes, I think that'll be the next thing in the UK that will happen. Yeah, don't know. Yeah, exactly. Dave and Emma outdoors. In reality, what will happen to them? A few quid fine and a slap on the wrist, and that's where it starts to, for me personally, starts to come down to an individual thing. From the point of view that I would like to see the system treat it impartially and come to the right judgment, etc., based on mitigation and aggravation and all the other factors there. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. And Chris Hall, I don't know why your comment was hidden, sorry, sir. But with this dullard, it's not entirely beyond imagination that some dumbass thought he had the right to fly about. Yeah, possibly. Borba Gaming, has Callum or anyone at CA disclosed any plans for better training for police to know the difference between what is and isn't allowed with the OAS flights? Well, in actual fact, interestingly, we've got a follow-up interview coming on Geeksvana with Andy from the MPCC Counter Drones team, Andy Harding, who's the manager there. If you remember, we did an interview when we started that collaboration with Andy. We've done a kind of a follow-up based on the content we've done so far with them, and we do talk about that. That's actually one of the talking points which comes up. But the training in terms of police, that would be something which would be the police responsibility to do. And as I say, in that interview, there is details of what's actually happening with that. So keep an eye out on that one. Should be out next week. Just got a bit more editing to do on it. And yeah, as Jason's saying, hope it's proportional. I agree with that as well. Okay, any others here? We'll allow that one to be Rue's comment to come up there. Stuart Taylor, hi Stuart. Another one of my flying buddies on Flight Simulator. Bizarre. The things you expect to be doing when you run a drone YouTube channel. Flying Flight Simulator with your Discord server wasn't necessarily one of them, but it's one I'm really enjoying. So yes. Problem is, anyone can buy a drone from Argos. I'd like to see more education from retailers to consumers when buying one, and perhaps from the manufacturers. Yeah, it's a really interesting one, and it's one of the topics I always raise, Stuart, as far as is the point of purchase the point. But then, of course, you've got self-build, you've got second-hand drones, you've got no accounting whether or not someone will read that particular documentation, etc. So I think it's difficult from that point of view. I think it really is a difficult one to know how we reach people in education terms. Obviously, there's always going to be the amount of people that will just ignore it anyway and will just say, hey, I'm not listening to the man and I'm just going to do what I want. But that's obviously what enforcement is there for as well. But that's an interesting one. And I think if we could crack that one, if we could find the right level that is enforced correctly in terms of ensuring retailers do it and can reach new flyers, then I think it could have some legs. But it's how you do it effectively. That's part of the problem. Barry Shepherd, hi, good to see you. Putting aside the crash stupidity of this guy ignoring the rules, what in reality is the likely outcome, assuming a 250-gram drone to the plane in these circumstances, similar to a bird strike? Yeah, I mean, we fortunately don't have much data on that. Fortunately and unfortunately, we don't have much data on that. I mean, a sub 250-gram drone coming close to an aircraft of that type is in my opinion, very dangerous. if you look, it was a much larger bird, but Matt Williams over at UAV Hub, Mr. MPW, the drone mentor, his military career was cut short flying helicopters because of a bird coming through the canopy. It was a very big bird. And I'm not sure, I'm not enough of a scientist to say if it hit at this angle, at this speed, X, Y, Z, it would have done X, Y, Z damage. It is, a sub 250 gram drone. It is small, but we are talking about conflicting an airspace. We're still talking about the, putting it with that, the speed of the plane coming towards it, etc., and that type of thing. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but I think the distraction of the pilot, I think the, it shouldn't be underestimated. And again, to clarify, we don't know what size drone the person was flying. We myself included with my little rant there, are all assuming to an extent that it probably was a sub 250 gram, but we don't know. Let me put the Mini 2 back on the hook there. Ian Simpson, I wonder what proportion of drone users are actually remote camera photographers and not droners. Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with that. Stuart Taylor, Geeksvana, Microsoft Flight Simulator channel when. Yeah, we are joking that if we keep flying and we keep having those sessions on Discord, this might become a flight simulator channel in the end. Geeksvana, the difference between bird strikes and drones is birds are going about their daily life with no alternative versus a remote pilot who intentionally put themselves in an avoidable situation. Yep, I agree with that. Yes, exactly. Mark's channel, just like driving a car, one careless person does not mean we are all idiots behind the controls. And I think that's where, as well as a community, we need to use this ourselves in terms of when we're out talking to people, when we're dealing with people on Facebook and that type of thing. Facebook is something that I tend to avoid, which I probably shouldn't, from the point of view that I should be more interactive on there and help where I can. But I think that we need to look to other drone operators, especially new operators at this time of year as well, and put an arm around the shoulder and help them as much as we possibly can. Not necessarily criticize where we see things going wrong. Obviously not if we see videos of this type published, that action should 100% be taken, but perhaps not sort of trolling people who put flights up that are clearly doing something wrong, or perhaps they don't realize the rules and that type of thing. And perhaps as a community, we need to put our arm around people who are new, etc. as well, because I think we could probably have a lot more penetration in reaching those people, because perhaps one of the first places people do go to when they've got questions on these things is Facebook and that type of thing, basically. Mark R. White, they should be made to put a link to the relevant authorities' regulations on the box of the drones. If it's good enough for cigarettes, then etc. Yeah, I know, and that places like Argos, etc., do have the drone regulations on their websites. So if you go into them, but of course they're at the bottom because they want to sell you the product at the top, etc. But yeah, I think we need to do something from there. And Dave and Emma Outdoor says, yes, that's Stuart. You can buy a drone from Argos or Amazon, but you can't buy a gun from Amazon. Would be better to prove that you have your operator ID in order to buy one. Yeah, there has to be something there, and I can't help but feeling, and coming back to the point that the point of sale is a trigger point in terms of where we can catch people. Again, it obviously doesn't help the second-hand market, but that's of course much smaller than the new market, I would say. So. And actually, interestingly enough, Canada has no prescriptive rules outside of FRZ for sub 250 grams, and I see no incidents occurring as a result of that freedom. Yeah, and we don't see frequent reports every single day of issues here in the UK with our sub 250 gram rules either. Actually, inside or outside FRZs from that point of view. So I think that yeah, I think that works both ways. I think few reports and doesn't mean it isn't happening, but equally the fact that you're not having lots of reports also shows that it isn't an everyday occurrence, in my opinion. I do agree with that. Yes, GMI visuals. Jason, can't add any more restrictions to orientation of the drone. I've sold my Mini 3 due to this, sticking with FPV and micros in secluded locations. I have a video coming up on the channel, which is the Geeksvana VLOS Survival Guide, which I think people are going to find extremely interesting. That should be out on Friday, but it does address and speak to the orientation thing a little bit more in terms of actual legislation. I don't want to give anything away on that video, but that's coming up at the end of the week, and I think that's going to be an interesting one for the UK hobby. Dominic Boyle, he was an idiot. I don't know how many rules. That's why watch you to learn. Thank you, sir. But I know not to go near a plane. That's common sense, and no education should be needed. Yeah, I agree with you there that there has to be some level of common sense about flying a drone around a very large crowd like that, and knowing that there's going to be an airplane in the air, etc. Muck and Mirrors, hi, good to see you. Hope you're well. My guest licensing next, and this event will hammer it home. As an ex-firearms user, same things happen to a group of hobby users, one idiot, and then all the firearms of a certain class are banned. Yeah, I know how you feel, and I've had that put to me by other firearm users actually, but I feel like the outcome, so the outcome is, for obvious reasons, less fatal, less lethal. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily going to be, but 100%. You know, I have to. I hold my hands up there. Just allowing a few other comments there as people are just trying to have a bit of sarcastic poking there, which is awesome. Clive FPV, the RAF are getting more understanding of drones as they're now using themselves. Completely agree with that fact. Epstein didn't kill himself. Hope you're well, sir. Haven't seen you for a while. As many, not the user, not Epstein, as many of, sorry, making myself laugh. You've got to love conspiracy theories. As many as 30 former RAF pilots have been recruited by China to train its air force how to fight against Western fighter jets and helicopters. Yeah, that was an interesting story, that one, wasn't it? Ian Simpson, it's interesting the comparison between sub 250 usage and regs against Chinese lantern problems and risks. Just because they are minimal regs doesn't mean minimal risk. And shut up, troll. Was that me? I'm not sure if that's me or somebody else, but there we go. Tim Long, XJets, 100% good points on the responsible drone community. Yes, Bruce does make some very good comments, 110% on that. And we'll just finish up with the last few comments here. Drone Father, I've just started with my first DJI Mini 2. Love it. And hope they don't put any harsh rules in place because of this person. Yeah, I don't think this is an attempt to find something to put rules on. I think personally, if it was some kind of shadow organization trying to put more drone rules in place and things, I think they'd use different stories to this one. I think this is a demonstration of effective enforcement, and therefore then hopefully proportional punishment, and then an educational piece to put out there to reach people that we're not reaching everybody at the moment. Certainly, if you go by my VLOS video, the fact that there were so many comments on that video of people that didn't even realize VLOS was a requirement or a thing was very interesting. Don't know, Bruce. Don't know what happened on that story yet. Still waiting to hear on the guy who confronted the drone flyer with an air gun. There's a Geeksvana one here. Yeah, haven't seen the footage, but what about the footage of the person flying next to the Lancaster? Yeah, and that's obviously one of the stories. I very rarely put people's footage up on the channel unless they've asked me to, or that type of thing, because I think it doesn't help the hobby to put sort of bad flying. But I did a report on the Lancaster video because I felt that it again was an attempt to reach people in terms of, there wasn't obviously any flight restrictions in place for that particular flight, I don't believe, but it was obviously still something which was highly publicized. So yeah, it has some interesting similarities, but perhaps this one sounds a little bit more serious, and was certainly followed up and of course enforced. Let me have a look here. Problem with breaking rules is they could enforce all flights being logged and give authorities the right to see flight logs. They could even then test eyesight to prove VLOS. And hi, good to see you, Ken. Hope you're well. That there is obviously a rabbit hole that we could go down in those terms, and I think it's something that. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one, and I think that good enforcement, positive enforcement of the drone rules doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go through and down into all of that minutiae of it. Basically, as I say, I don't think that there are people hiding in the wings trying to, police officers and the CIA hiding in the bushes trying to capture us doing anything at all wrong with our drones so they can ban us. That isn't the atmosphere that I think is there, personally speaking. But I think we all support effective enforcement of the safety side of the drone rule, certainly. Simply Scotland, Gary, hi, good to see you, one of our new members of our Discord channel. Hope you're well. Geeksvana, it's good they managed to catch the individual easily. This should put a warning to others that they simply will not get away with this type of flying. Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because on one of our videos with the counter drone team from the NPCC, one of those interview videos, they did talk about the fact that we might not necessarily catch you straight away and that type of thing, but there's lots of different ways to find out the flight and who was flying and these sort of things, and it can sometimes just take a bit of time. But yes, it is a 110% a good educational point in terms of enforcement, certainly. Yeah, and DB80, no law would have prevented this. This won't generate new ones. Current laws prevents this already, hence the conviction. Perfectly well said, sir. Barry Shepherd, anyone know if they caught them? I think that was only just a few minutes ago, but just to let you know, I believe it was the individual posted the footage online, because I know that the footage blew up a while ago online and was started appearing across a few of the Facebook groups, etc. So yes. So there we go. Kenny, not just tractors brown. Good to see you. DVLA would like all RC cars registered with them next year. £10 fee, and you get a registration number. Don't. I don't have RC cars, but please let's not go down that route. And Barry Shepherd is saying he posted the video. Mike Jones is saying he posted the video on YouTube. So yes, it was out there on social media. Jason from GMI, same with FPV. I'm not a fan of bind and fly. I think the level of entry needs to be high to keep some Muppets out. It's so difficult, isn't it? Because I don't want to be a gatekeeper to the hobby. I don't want to be a gatekeeper to anything. But equally, where is the line? This is, I think, what we're trying to find, and I think what we're trying to struggle with. Where is the line where? Because it's a sub 250 gram drone, so the risk is lower. Hence, we get so many more allowances and rights of where we're allowed to fly them at the moment here in the UK. So, we're talking about the lowest risk form of aircraft, and we're talking sub 250. I don't know if this guy was flying a Mavic 3. I don't know what he was flying, but we are for this conversation talking sub 250. So the risk is lower, but there is still risk and there is still issue. And knowing where that line needs to be, that yes, as you say, Jason, keeps the Muppets out and the idiots out, but actually doesn't gatekeep, because I'm concerned that we already start to turn people away from the hobby, especially the RC and the self-build side of things already, and that does concern me. Ian Simpson, to help understanding of risk assessment, it'd be worth having a debate on any of the drone problem videos on what could have further gone wrong here. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Don't know why. Sorry, there's somebody's comments that are being hidden and I don't know why. Chris, I don't know why your Chris Hall, I don't know why your comments were hidden. They are now unhidden, so you should be able to comment away, sir. Apologies there. I think a wrong button was pressed by a moderator there or something. Simon Stickland, Barry, yep, he posted video plus encrypted flight log, probably used, also possible detection system. Yeah, from the press releases and the information that I've been able to find out today, because obviously this happened today as far as the guilty plea, it does seem to be posted online, and then as Simon's saying, all of the bits they can do afterwards, frankly, to have it. And Ray Kelly saying hi to me. Hi, Ray. As we're towards the end, I thought I'd bring that one up. So there we go. So that's an interesting discussion. I think most of us are very much along the same lines. I think we're very much along the same thinking process, that this isn't a flight that most of us would have even considered taking, even with sub 250 gram drones, whether or not we believe there would be any damage to the aircraft or anything else like that. I think that we are as a community in agreement in those terms. And I also think a lot of us see the struggle in terms of how we reach everybody and how we educate people. And I think we agree that something like a high profile case of this type is going to do that. But I think we need to see the outcome of it. And, the problem, of course, is that once the column inches disappear, and I don't want to see somebody overly punished just to get a clicky headline that everybody that reaches the general public, and therefore, has an impact on educating people. But I think the proportional and correct sentencing of this gentleman could well be the kind of story that could help the hobby in the long run, frankly, in my personal opinion. And somebody else spits bean. Tazzy, your first comment was hidden. I have no idea why it was hidden. Buy a drone, require unlock code from something like a Demares test, possibly even more towards an A2C of C. Drone unlocks, education given, fly where you shouldn't, then get your arse whooped. Maybe it was the arse whooping that YouTube didn't like. I'd have no issue with that. Then if you sell the drone, a reset reinstates a Demares type test again, string up the abusers of the law and regs. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think it starts to get very difficult when you have regs that then have to be enforced through manufacturers. I'm not sure that that's necessarily the route to go. If you look at remote ID at the moment, it's getting there. It's stuttering. DJI is certainly doing a lot to comply, but there's lots of Rotor Riot simply stating on their website that this isn't intended for flight in the US, and if you do, then you have to comply with this. So I wouldn't want to see rules coming into place in terms of, because I agree 100% this is the line where someone starts to fly a drone that is the best place to educate them, but I'm not sure if involving and enforcing manufacturers to have that in the apps and that type of thing would necessarily be the right way to go in terms of what would work. But I'm more than open for people who are more tech savvy and who have more experience of that kind of data processing to prove me wrong. Ken Beaches, you can do as many tests as you want. It doesn't mean you'll follow the rules. An MOT for my car is only valid until you drive away and put ball tyres on it. Yeah, no, I do agree with that sentiment, Ken, as well. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. This was an interesting story. Also great, as I say, always to get the community feedback. I really do appreciate you for coming along. Tomorrow we have the next part of my interview series with the CAA with Callum Holland, where we're talking communication as far as how the CAA communicates with people or doesn't, as you may feel, and also how they feel towards the drone hobby and the investigation of the open category, which is coming up later in the week. We also have a interview specifically about the specific category and also BV loss. And then we have one as well for FPV, because FPV, when I'm talking about the rules and regulations, is one of the things which I think gets a little bit sort of excluded on my channel, mainly because I'm not thinking like an FPV pilot, because I only fly things like the DJI FPV drones. So I'm not thinking like a true FPV at all. But I have consciously organised an interview with Callum regarding FPV and the future of FPV in the UK to put a few questions and get some information. So that's coming up. And also we have a live stream on Thursday where Matt Williams is joining me, where we're going to be talking about all of the interviews and doing a bit of a look back on that. And then Friday, we've got the VLOS survival guide and lots more videos. I've got literally a couple of dozen videos which have been delayed due to all of the happenings with CAA releases and everything else that's been happening on the channel the last few weeks. So we've got a big backlog of some awesome content coming up. So there we go. Thank you everybody for joining us. I really appreciate it. And I will see you next time on Geeksvana Live. Have a great week. Bye-bye.